Well, with me now is the geopolitical analyst and director of the Global Strategy Project, Marco Vicenzino. So, Marco, should the remarks by Poroshenko be taken seriously then? Do you think that Russia could really invade eastern Ukraine?
There's two parts here. There's his statements and the actual invasion taking place. I mean, obviously, this has been the most serious fighting. It's gone beyond skirmishes since the signing of the second ceasefire, Minsk II, in February of 2015. That's clear. In his speech, what's different today distinguishes the fact that Poroshenko in the past has rarely used the word invasion. So this underscores the level of seriousness in the fighting right now. Now, would a Russian invasion take place, full scale? What he was talking about is a full-scale Russian invasion along the border. There's 2,200 kilometers to the border, and most of the current fighting is taking place in the provinces of Donetsk and Lugansk. I don't think there would be a full-scale invasion. Reason being is that I think Putin is far too astute, knowing what the consequences would be. It would be further economic isolation and further diplomatic isolation. He'll continue with his covert war, which is fairly public.
And the international monitors who are essentially watching what's happening in the region, the OCSC, they say they've spotted heavy weapons on the border. How much power and influence does this group have?
Okay, so there's a case of the monitors and the actual build-up. In terms of monitors, they're there due to the invitation of both sides of the conflict and international players trying to mediate. They're there, but their effectiveness is as good as both sides, the separatists and the Ukrainian government. They're as effective as they allow them to be. So in this case, they're limited in what they can do if they're not permitted to go where they want to go. Secondly, in terms of a buildup, I think it's fairly clear. A buildup is taking place on the Russian side of the border. A buildup in heavy weaponry and a buildup of troops. That can mean two things. It can mean a rotation, or it can mean the preparation for a full-scale summer offensive.
So the EU as well, Marco, is due to meet in the next 3 weeks to decide whether to renew these sanctions on Russia. Russia, of course, denies any involvement in this conflict. What does the Kremlin need to do to bring itself back in from the cold and essentially repair relations with the EU?
So in terms of these, here we have the renewing of the sanctions, denial of Russian troops being there, and then on the third side, what does Russia need to do? In terms of the sanctions are concerned, they expire in a few weeks' time. In my opinion, they will be renewed. There hasn't been enough progress to warrant the elimination of these sanctions. They'll be renewed for another 6 months until July of 2016. Russia was trying to make advances towards the West as you approach the deadline, but I think what's taking place now will basically put a damper on that. So in terms of Russian denials, we had last year in terms of the Crimea invasion. At first, Vladimir Putin denied that the Russians were the little green men, as they call them, as the troops were present in Crimea. Afterwards, he admitted it, basically admitted that he had lied. And in terms of what they need to do, basically they need, from the Western perspective, the Russians need to lean on the separatists to halt fighting, to bring them to the table and begin with the implementation and the execution of the ceasefire and the beginning of the process to try to bring this all to an end.
And when we look at the situation for Ukraine, their economy has contracted by 5.5% in the last year. What is the future for the country when it comes to defending its territory? How much support will they need from their partners from the West?
Ukraine is fully dependent upon the West. It's dependent upon it economically, diplomatically, and militarily. If you look at it, I mean, right now President Poroshenko was voted to office about a year ago with full support. He won in the first round at over 50%. But over the past year, also, his position has weakened, has eroded. Reasons why? Because of the war. As the war goes on, it drains the budget. It prevents him from doing what he wants to do economically. After years of economic mismanagement and corruption, they're having a difficult time to try to bring the country's fully dependent on Western aid, IMF and other Western players. And then in terms of militarily, I mean, the United States is a prime player in that. It's not giving the Ukrainian, it's giving it non-lethal aid right now. But the fact is that if the fighting continues, that option is not off the table of providing Ukraine with lethal aid. It's being discussed at the present time. So in this sense, Ukraine is in a very difficult position. Poroshenko is in a very difficult position. The West is basically trying to bring both sides to the table to try to resolve this issue. But in my opinion, we're far from that point yet. There'll be more fighting in the foreseeable future, particularly during the summer months.